Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist, a revival of original Adventism and ancient Christianity, presents Escape for Thy Life, a program explaining prophecy, current affairs, theological issues, rights and freedoms, health issues, natural disasters, comparative religion, spiritualism, pioneer history, creation versus evolution, escape for thy life. Good day, this is Brother Medina for Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist, and please let us start with a word of prayer. Gracious, loving Father, please be with us as we give this presentation. Help everyone that view this program to learn these precious facts, these precious truths, and to be prepared for the end, which is swiftly coming. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. Today our topic is the destruction of republicanism. The destruction of republicanism. And when we say republicanism, we mean the remaking of the public upon the foundations of unalienable rights and freedoms. Yes, my dear people, rights and freedoms are inalienable. They come from God. They are not given by legislation. They are not given by government. They are not given by nature. They are not given by human beings. They are all given by God. And what we are looking at here is republicanism is a type of governance that explains rights and freedoms to be God ordained. And so, what do we have here? We have at this moment a great work being done to destroy republicanism. Republicanism is at present being destroyed by a great communist, not conspiracy theory, conspiracy reality. Yes, my dear people, a great grand destruction being taken place. And this destruction is done by communist organizations, legislations, and policies, all headed by one man, George Soros. Now, who is George Soros? George Soros is the policy action man for the Rothschilds. He used their billions to achieve the New World Order. And he is behind many of the corruptions, many of the upheavals, many of the unrest taking place in this world. This is not our statement. This is facts released to the public in emails and other things. So we want you to take a look at this first clip that shows this fact about George Soros.
What happens in the darkness will soon come to light, and it is right now as we are speaking. The IMF, World Bank, One World Government pushing shadowy billionaire liberal manipulator George Soros has been hacked. More than 2,500 files from his organization, the Open Society, which is run by billionaire George Soros, have been leaked by hackers on the DC Leaks webpage, just waiting to be combed through right now. The files are grouped into sections such as geographical regions, the World Bank, and the President's Office, and cover the period from 2008 up until 2016. They reveal work plans, strategies, priorities, and other activities by George Soros and include reports on the European elections, migration, and asylum inside of Europe. You could actually see the leaks right now personally yourself by going to dcleaks.com. The link will be in the description below. dcleaks.com, in their mission statement, they say, quote, "We believe U.S. citizens have the right to know how the domestic and foreign policy of the United States are shaped and who the real policy makers are." And George Soros is definitely one of those influential elitist members who not only buy elections but also make major important decisions. They also say in their mission statement, quote, "Our aim is to find out and tell you the truth about U.S. decision-making processes as well as about the key elements of American political life." Even though DC Leaks has revealed previous emails from the NATO Secretary himself, Philip Breedlove, which showed him provoking, egging on, demanding that President Obama start a U.S. conflict against Russia. These are the important documents that they're showing because these spy games, these hacks and leaks go back and forth between the two countries. But in the United States, we are not getting the full picture because when George Soros personally finances the release and curates the release of the Panama Papers, the major hack that happened just a few months ago that was financed and curated by George Soros himself and his Open Society and his organizations. Now, just to understand who George Soros is, he recently wrote an article saying that Putin is a bigger threat to Europe's existence than ISIS. You could just see how benevolent George Soros is to ISIS, the radical Islamic terrorist group that the United States financed and helped grow inside of Syria to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi and helped try to overthrow Bashar al-Assad inside of Syria. These radical Islamic terrorists who have been committing countless numbers of terrorist attacks inside of Europe, George Soros doesn't see them as big as a threat as Putin. You could see how senile, you could see how hell-bent he is on revenge against Putin and Russia, and how clairvoyant he is not. George Soros is the main one pushing for refugees inside of Europe. He is pushing for the transgenders movement. He is the major financer of the liberal leftist Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton agenda. As previous WikiLeaks emails show, how he was giving marching orders telling Hillary Clinton what to do when she was the Secretary of State, running the State Department, deciding foreign policy of the United States. This is the man man. These emails, these leaks prove that he is the man behind the curtain, pulling the strings, not only with billions of dollars financing elections, but purely manipulating where the United States goes with their foreign policy. There's also a list showing you all the George Soros non-government organizations, NGOs, and how they are manipulating elections inside of Europe. The hacks are revealing the true power behind this liberal push, this liberal agenda behind Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and it was no one other than the one world government pushing George Soros.
Yes, my dear people, the source of the problems in the world today, the source of all its unrest currently now, whether it is in Syria, whether it is the refugee crisis in Europe, all are caused by George Soros. If you want to call it Black Lives Matters, if you want to deal with gender fluidity, if you want to deal with same-sex marriages, hate crime legislations that chip away at inalienable rights and freedoms in the United States and all over Europe, it is George Soros that has maintained a large amount of organizations through funding to push these ideas, to get governments to institute these ideas all over the world. And that's how come we have this terrible subversion of republicanism in the world. Take a look at these clips.
Via activist post in what will likely be an historic leak, not only George Soros, but his Open Society foundations and a number of groups supported by Soros were hacked to the tune of 2,576 files, which have already been released by DC Leaks. The files come from institutes and Soros-operated, funded organizations all across the world: USA, Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa, the President's Office, and the World Bank. The documents span from 2008 to 2016. George Soros is, of course, most well known for playing a major role in the funding and facilitating of the bulldozer revolution in Serbia that overthrew Milosevic in 2000. George's Rose Revolution of 2003, the 2006 push to move Turkey towards a more Islamist governing structure, and even the Occupy movement in the United States, among a great many others, none of which brought anything other than greater misery, impoverishment, and police state mechanisms to bear on the general public. The Occupy movement, maybe being the only exception, still brought nothing to its participants except the opportunity to burn off excess anger and energy, along with a few cracked protester skulls. It was otherwise an incredible waste of time. Soros has also been instrumental in funding and radicalizing the Black Lives Matter movement that has produced riots, racial attacks, and general racial tension across the country. We can include some of the other articles from this leaked Soros memo. Refugee crisis is the new normal and gives new opportunities for global influence. Soros funds the legalization of marijuana, which is ultimately a massive peaceful movement, and then he funds violent movements as well.
George Soros, the Democratic Party, and Hillary Clinton. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. As you may know, the 85-year-old billionaire is a far-left fanatic whose Open Society organization advocates no borders anywhere in the world. According to Soros, everyone should be able to go wherever they want for any reason and stay there. Recently, hackers believed to be backed by Russia exposed more than 2,000 documents connected to Soros and his Open Society. The information very disturbing. Soros has funded investigations of individuals here in the USA who are opposed to radical Islam. People like Pamela Geller, Frank Gaffney, Liz Cheney, and Cliff May. Mr. May will be here in just a few moments. Finally, George Soros has donated about $13 million to the Democrats this election cycle. That includes $7 million to a Hillary Clinton super PAC. 12 years ago, here's what Mrs. Clinton said about George Soros.
We have been given an extraordinary blessing, and at this moment in time, our country needs us. And we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts.
Joining us from Washington is the aforementioned Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. First of all, do you know anything more about Soros and his crew stalking you or whatever they're doing?
Well, it wasn't news that we were being trolled, targeted for delegitimization and defamation. And as you know, Bill, I run a think tank, a policy institute formed after 9/11 that focuses on national security. That means we focus largely on jihadism, Islamism, radical Islam, call it what you will. We knew there were these various individuals on Twitter. They were tweeting against us. They were publishing articles, mostly in left-wing journals, about us, trying to dig up dirt on us. What we didn't know until last weekend was that George Soros was giving them hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to do this. That came as a surprise.
All right, so they're paid assassins to try to get you and the other people we mentioned.
Yes, my dear people. Here we have George Soros in an interview with Germany's BILD, September the 20th, 2014. Here is what he said about black people. I quote, "I am going to bring down the United States by funding black hate groups. We'll put them into a mental trap and make them blame white people. The black community is the easiest to manipulate." End of quote. Did you see that? So you who in Black Lives Matters and other black groups, you're being used. You're being used by Rothschild's point man to bring about the destruction of the United States, to destroy republicanism, to put all of us in the chains and enslavement of a new communistic world order. You need to wake up to these facts. Look, we are showing them to you. You see, my dear people, we are facing one great, grand, global machinery of delusion and deception, made up of thousands of organizations, including the media in a large way, all pushing towards destroying republicanism to set up the new world order. If you look at this document here from August the 13th, 2016, it is public policy polling document, an internal memo. Notice they say restricted access, and then they say interviews. Again, they tell you restricted. And then they go to internal document, do not release. Again, restricted mailing list. And in the overview, they tell you Trump dominates Hillary, flat lines. That's what they're telling you. This document shows that Donald Trump is leading Hillary in votes by 74% as against 9%. Yet they're lying and telling you they are neck and neck and that Donald Trump has now passed Hillary Clinton in a few votes. So the point is, they have been lying to us. Do not trust them. They are just lying over and over again. Yes, my dear people. And we have put together these clips of evidence that there are attacks against your rights and freedoms, which is attacks against republicanism, destroying the global influence of republicanism that came since the American Revolution. So take a look at these clips that show this.
For me, that this is not a free speech area.
Again, we have designated areas. I'll take it that you were recording.
Yes, I am.
We have designated areas on campus. With him not being a student or faculty or staff, then he has to go through the proper procedures regarding the reservation.
So you told me that this was not a free speech area. Can you clarify what that means?
This is not a designated free speech area. So if you, more than welcome to take a look at the facility use policy.
And by that you mean that there are free speech areas on campus and that the entire campus is not a free speech area?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Rutgers, the university. To avoid microaggressions, ladies and gentlemen, do not be offended. Only speak when necessary. Don't tell the truth. You better stay on your little tippy toes and make sure you hurt nobody's feelings. Students in at least one Rutgers University residence hall are being encouraged to use only language that is helpful and necessary to avoid committing microaggressions. The display, which is part of the school's Language Matters campaign, also includes handwritten definitions of the 3 types of microaggressions, as well as a flyer listing potentially offensive words and phrases. Oh my goodness, get a life! Students in at least one Rutgers University residence hall are being encouraged to use only language that is helpful and necessary to avoid committing microaggressions. It's about Christianity. It's about being a good individual and telling somebody that they are wrong. loving them enough to correct them when they're in the wrong, instead of being, oh, I can't hurt your feelings. The truth is going to be censored by these microaggressions, because the truth sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, is a bit offensive. And that's okay.
According to the New York City Commission on Human Rights, there are more than 2 genders. How many genders do you think there are, folks? 4, 5, 10? Try 31 on for size. Yes, 31 genders. And you thought Baskin-Robbins had a monopoly on 31 flavors, eh? Here's the official rundown. There's bi-gendered and cross-dressed, drag queen and drag king. Then there's female to male and FTM. Is that last one a typo? Doesn't the acronym FTM stand for female to male? Whatever. There's also trans person. But trans person is somehow different than transsexual, transsexual with the extra S, pangender, or person of transgender experience. I'm already feeling exhausted. Then there's gender fluid. That sounds like some sort of a new age beverage to me. Say, can I please have a 6-pack of gender fluid and a bag of Doritos? Turns out gender fluid is a person whose gender identification and presentation shifts whether within or outside of societal gender-based expectations. Naturally. By the way, gender fluid shouldn't be confused with gender gifted. There's also a category called gender bender. No, seriously. What's a gender bender? I Googled it. It's a person who dresses and behaves in a way characteristic of the opposite sex. Don't mean to be dense here, but how is a gender bender different from a drag king or a drag queen? It's like new math. It's so complicated. Then there's two-spirit, which is pretty much the same as gender fluid, except you have to be an Indian like Elizabeth Warren to claim that title. Other terms had me reaching for the dictionary as well, such as agender. Agender means someone without any gender. Apparently being agender means you're genderless or gender challenged, or you simply don't believe in gender. Some of the official gender designations sound like the jargon you'd hear on an science fiction channel program, like non-binary transgender. This is supposedly a catch-all category for gender identities that aren't exclusively masculine or feminine. No idea how that's different from agender. Not quite done yet, folks. Other gender categories include butch, third sex, and femme. Then there's androgynous and androgyne. What's the difference between androgynous and androgyne, you ask? Hey, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Now, let's see now. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 29 genders for those keeping track at home. But the official number is 31. Oh, silly me. I forgot to include the gender classic designations of man and woman. It's also laughable until you get to the not-so-funny part. This gender list has been officially accepted by ultra-liberal Mayor Bill de Blasio. Meanwhile, the New York City Commission on Human Rights is so far out in left field. This committee actually holds its meetings on the warning track of Yankee Stadium. And get this, according to the commission, it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of gender identity and gender expression in the workplace, public spaces, and housing. Any business having the temerity to defy the 31 genders law, well, they can be fined $250,000 US. But it's so perversely amusing to see how the left has again turned itself into a pretzel in trying to justify the logic behind gender political correctness while disregarding biology 101. For starters, say you're a male heterosexual voyeur and you get your jollies from leering at naked girls. Now you just have to rebrand yourself as a fill-in-the-blank, and presto, you gain access to the female change room. Now whose rights are being violated? And since it's now illegal in New York to discriminate on the basis of gender, how does that policy coexist with established hiring policies that are committed to so-called affirmative action? You know, able-bodied white males need not apply? fascinating. Anyway, gotta see a man about a horse right now. If the male washroom is occupied, I'll just self-identify as gender fluid and use the ladies' room. Don't worry, gals, I'll try to remember to put the seat down.
If you disagree today with somebody who disagrees with the Bible and you speak, but they have an agenda, and if you won't stop, they are going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand this? You understand this?
I do. I've had death threats.
We have never lived in a day of our time, in our history of America, where you couldn't have an opposite opinion. Now, they're determined to wipe out all of those who disagree with them. I mean, that to me is hideous. And just like I was talking about, protesting is one thing if you do it quietly and you're going to say, I hold up a sign and say, I don't agree with you. Killing you,
yeah.
And that's what they're calling for now. They're calling for death. And the death is terrorism. The death is to scare you so you will step back into the shadows.
Right.
And the church has mostly stepped back.
So, going back to 07, we lost the majority. And the new majority, Democrats, were pushing something called hate crimes. And I could see as clearly as I can see you where this was going. And we were told, no, this will never affect churches, it'll never affect Christians. I'm going, you know, because Christianity, we know, is a religion of love, unlike any other religion. You know, and Jesus himself said, greater love than no one than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends, and that's what he did. And yet, after all the belittling I've gotten, and then going back then, oh, you want to stand in the way of hate crimes? This will stop all this hatefulness. No, it's going to be used against Christians. Let's stop it now. And Republicans going, Louis, you're really overreacting. No, I could see where this was going. Supreme Court has said secular humanism is a religion, and now they've established it. Then, or abridging the freedom of speech. Hillary Clinton, the UN, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, they all are now totally advocates for taking away your freedom of speech and allowing that part of the Muslim Brotherhood plan for the future to check the box, because once you cannot say anything negative about radical Islam, then their goal of subjugating the U.S. Constitution to Sharia law gets a check in that box. Your religious freedom will be gone. Your freedom of speech will be gone. Freedom of the press, well, that's not officially gone. It's just if you express truth in the press, the rest of the press makes fun of you.
Yes, my dear people. We have shown you all these important facts to help you understand what is going on in the world today. You learned it from Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist. We have put it together. We have shown you because we care for you and we want you to be saved. But we want you to properly understand the world that you are living in now and not be fooled by the large propaganda coming from the media and coming from various organizations that can all be traced right back to George Soros and the Rothschilds. Yes, my dear people, we know that global communism is being instituted right now, and that global republicanism is being chipped away or eroded away or withered away. That when republicanism withers away, it is going to be taken over by something called commuligion, which is the enforcement of religion by the same communist legislation passed in the whole different parts of the earth by the influence of the Illuminati or George Soros's Rothschild organizations. Yes, my dear people, but the end is near. You need to prepare. You need to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior. So may God bless you until we meet again. and prepare you until we meet again. In Jesus' holy name, amen.